Hello, fellow frogs. I was taking a bath and suddenly the water just got quite boiling. Yeah, we're talking about tech again. Instead, just quite joyful. Wish I was talking about Kirby or Sonic, that's for sure. So, in the dystopian nightmare that is the United States, two states have made some progress towards operating system level age verification. That will be California and New York, and we're going to talk about them a little bit. I read both laws before I started being outraged. No, actually, I got outraged first, and then I read the law, and then I was still outraged but more informed. And in my opinion, I'm very scared. First, we'll talk about the law themselves. They're written in legalese, and if you ever had to read the legal text, it feels like someone is trying to play mind games with you, like, oh no, you won't think of a loophole. And they have the whole definition for terms that you're more familiar with, and it's not that good. So I will sum it up, obviously, as I've understood them, and you're free to check for yourself if you don't believe me or if you want to fact check me. That's fine. Now, these laws have something in common. Basically, what is expected of this verification is that the operating system checks in one way or another, that will depend on the law, your actual age, like your precise age, and then it sends to any requesting application and or website and or other things that can request it, an age bracket, which is basically can be like less than 13 years old, between 13 and 60, between 60 and 80, and actual fucking adult. An important distinction is that regardless of the method, the operating system is not supposed to send the verification, it's only supposed to send out the result. So the age bracket and nothing else. So that's fine-ish, right? Also, one of the things these laws have in common is that basically if an application developer has some other ways of confirming your age, for example, let's say they're PayPal and you have your ID on there and they see one age sent by the OS that says like, oh, I'm definitely above 80. And then PayPal has your ID and you're 60, they'll be like, oh, legally they're forced to recognize and at least forced not to disregard those conflicting pieces of information. So why are we doing this again? Well, we're doing this to protect the children. Of course. Yes. The New York version of the law is way more specific when it comes to what has to send a signal. Basically said everything, like every application, every website, which was a very big exclamation mark moment for me. California is more like, oh, every application, but not like plugins, not expansions, and I don't think it mentioned websites, but maybe it does, and I'm stupid and I don't remember. Also, another thing that differs is that California basically says that a developer is not liable if the user that verified is not the same one as the user who actually uses the device. Which number one is goddamn common sense that I saw missing from the New York law. And number two, it doesn't solve anything then. A big problem that we have with children on the internet is parental neglect. And I'm not afraid to use that term because it's exactly what it is. It's very fun to watch your favorite video essayists making comments about iPad babies, or just watching cringe compilations, or just looking at your cousin who's probably 7 years old and is already on YouTube or TikTok. But this is an actual problem. Parents are the ones who will fucking make the age check. So this entire law, both of them are worthless if we are already aware that the user who's making the account check is not exactly the same as the one using the device. Now, on that front, there's also something that I find very interesting. On the California law, it's mentioned that this check must be done with two parameters. One must be done on user account creation on the device, which makes the most sense, even if, I'm sorry to say, a user account is not necessarily tied to a person. So I don't really know how this law makes account for that. For example, at work, you might have general ass user accounts. Who's supposed to do the age check? They are public computers. How does that work at all? There are Internet of Things or embedded devices. When you go and use a kiosk in a shop, that's a computer. What do we do? And fuck, I can attest to that one. I run web servers. A way that some web servers works is that one Linux user account equals one website. Basically, when you handle a lot of websites on the same Linux server, that's how it separates properly things and handles file permissions, etc. To keep it very simple. What do I do now? If I were in California, how the fuck will I have to comply with that? I have to upgrade my Linux to a version that will keep asking me for my birth date every time I have to create a hosting? Or do I have to ask for the customer's version? Because it's his website. It's one of those things where legislature is obviously complicated, etc. But when it touches a field you're not really familiar with, it can pass off as fine, even though it's very stupid. But now we're talking about tech. We're talking about stuff I'm very familiar with. And I feel like there is not a single person who knows how those stuff works and is of good faith behind this law. They can't be both. They absolutely cannot be both. They're probably neither, to be honest. And yeah, the method of verification is just asking you for your birth date. Yeah. Now, someone that would be a little bit cynical could say that, is it really a good thing if a child that is going on the internet has a big sign with written, "I am a child" above them? Won't that make grooming super simple? Because anonymity is actually one of the things that protect you on the internet. It does harm, yes, but it also protects you. God knows that when I was younger, if some people knew I was a child, I would have gotten way more problems. Well, I mean that we'll have platforms on the web that will be able to lure children and use that new technology, that new API, to check their age and do all sorts of terrible things. That's a question we should ask ourselves. That's, of course, when children don't just get their devices validated by their parents or use a device that were validated to begin with, because not everyone does this whole one user account per person bullshit, and parents don't give a crap. And I support regulations like a lot of times, but I support the good regulations, the one that are made smartly, not this fucking band-aid over a missing leg kind of regulations of parents that don't give a shit. So we're like, oh, let's just do this. Let's do this massive overreach into the operating system. So every internet device on Earth. It really does drive me insane. Now, the New York law is even worse to me, mostly because the method of age verification is not specified in the law themselves. It says, oh, refer to the Office of the Attorney General. I only vaguely know what an Attorney General is. I'm not American. But the age verification method is modular. It's separate from the law. And it's stated explicitly that it can be updated if the Office of the Attorney General sees fit. So they can crack down on this shit. That makes me feel very insane. So I have these two problems mostly, where it's like, on one hand, these are very tech literate laws, and these are very kind of like puffing your chest out, bustful laws to say, oh, we are cracking down on child abuse online. Well, it really doesn't do that because it doesn't address the base problem, the problem being parents. And that already annoys me to begin with. But also, one would be well advised, in my opinion, to be wary of that kind of regulations coming into place, that kind of systems where you can say, oh, I can check a core part of your identity because it's permanently operating system account and everyone can check it, every single thing. That seems like a dangerous law, a dangerous thing to have in every operating system on Earth. I don't want to do a slippery slope fallacy, be like, oh, this is bad because it could be X. But then look around you, especially if you live in the US, with those fuckwits you have at the government, with ties that you have to people like Peter Thiel and this literally evil company Palantir, and then their most evil company Persona, of course, Persona fans had to bring something awful into my life. It feels like the beginning of the end. Like, anonymity on the internet is already quite tough to claim still exists, but it would be dead if that kind of thing started to happen. Yeah, of course, you would be probably able to spoof that shit. If you were very willing to resist that, you could just fork a Linux version, like, I don't know, fucking grab Linux Mint, Debian, whatever it is you're using, and then just spoof the age verification shit. So you keep sending a consistent signal, but in any of your data, you know what goes in, what goes out. Open source software, yay. Even if all the things were to be developed like this, where you had to send out progressively more identity signals, you'd probably still be able to spoof them if you had the technology. But number one, I don't want this. I don't want to have to do this. I don't want that kind of obligation. Number two, it's gonna get worse more and more, because obviously this will not work. They'll have to go, oh, we're cracking down even further with new things, new methods, new laws, and new spying. And number three, fuck me, even if people like me, or maybe you, if you're watching this, will be able to sidestep this and explain to their friends and willing companions, there will be such a large amount of the population that will be infected by this that won't be able to do a single thing, that will just accept it because that's just how things are now. That, fuck it, we will have lost because people will just give up if that comes to pass. And that gets me really mad, honestly. I wish from the bottom of my heart that more people were interested in learning and were helped and taught how to be more tech literate in an age where I feel like tech companies are really taking such a big part in politics, in lobbying, and in motivations between X and Y. They're either the ones that push the will for things to happen or that give the means for bad things to happen. So, but we have grown complacent, I think. I don't know. I really don't know when this will all go. As is, the California law is not like the most infringing thing on itself, but I think it will be able to be actually weaponized against children. I think it will be ineffective to begin with, and I think it's just step one on a rather perilous path that I don't want us to follow. And if I hear one of you from outside of the United States, hello brother, going, oh, but this will not reach us. Bitch, if it gets into an operating system level, first off, it will be inside your computer, and companies like Microsoft and Apple will probably just ask you anyway. And if they don't, what do you think will happen next? Do you think it's gonna stay in the US? Don't you think people in the European Union will say, oh, we want that control too? It will be the exact same. And really wish I noticed earlier that kind of trend of tech companies and governments kind of like scooping all of our tech rights, all of our rights to freedom, privacy, etc. I didn't. I'm sure I'm not the only one who didn't. Some people still haven't noticed after all. And I don't really know what to do with it, and honestly frustrates me. It scares me both. It's time to think we just have to kill people.